The Zarkonian warship Eternal Glory emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in prismatic patterns. Supreme Commander Vix stood on the bridge, his iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to azure as he observed the small blue planet on the main display. His species had ruled the Andromeda Arm for 10,000 years, and this was to be another routine first contact with a pre-spacefaring civilization. Preliminary analysis complete, Supreme Commander, announced Science Director Melara, her tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. The dominant species appears to be carbon-based, requiring frequent periods of unconsciousness for neural recovery. Their atmospheric requirements are narrow, and their bodies are remarkably fragile. Vix's secondary hearts pulsed with amusement. Another soft species. Show me their defensive capabilities. The holographic display shifted, showing Earth's orbital installations and military satellites. To Zarkonian eyes, they appeared primitive, almost laughably so. Their weapons were chemical and nuclear-based, their ships still relied on reaction drives, and their defensive systems were barely able to track incoming meteors. They call themselves humans, Melara continued. They've achieved limited space travel but haven't established colonies beyond their lunar satellite. Their military technology is approximately Grade 3 on the Imperial scale. Hardly worth our attention, Vix remarked, but protocol demanded they make formal contact. The Eternal Glory had been dispatched to this sector after detecting unusual energy signatures from the system, signatures that suggested the humans were close to discovering faster-than-light travel. The ship's AI intercepted and decoded thousands of human communications channels, building a comprehensive language database in minutes. Vix authorized a broadcast on all frequencies. People of Earth, this is Supreme Commander Vix of the Zarkonian Empire. Your world has been noticed by superior beings. Prepare for evaluation and possible integration into our protectorate system. The response came faster than expected. A human female's voice, steady and diplomatic. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to Sol Space. We're eager to establish peaceful diplomatic relations. Vix noted the primitive encryption on their communication channel. These humans didn't even have quantum entanglement communicators. Admiral Chen, your species will be evaluated based on the Imperial standard. Prepare to receive our delegation. The Zarkonians selected a landing site in a region the humans called Geneva, choosing to demonstrate their superiority by landing a massive warship in the middle of their diplomatic district. The ship's anti-gravity drives didn't even disturb the surrounding buildings, a display of technological finesse that Vix expected would properly humble the humans. But when the delegation descended from their ship, they found Admiral Chen waiting with a small team, showing neither fear nor awe. She was shorter than even a Zarkonian child, her skin soft and exposed, yet she stood with unmistakable authority. Supreme Commander, she greeted Vix, meeting his four eyes directly. We've prepared a comprehensive presentation of human achievements and capabilities. We believe you'll find we're ready for full diplomatic relations. Vix's scales rippled with dismissive colors. Your species is barely able to survive on your own planet. You require artificial environments for space travel, your bodies break under minimal pressure, and your weapons are centuries behind Imperial standard. With respect, Commander, Chen replied, I suggest you reserve judgment until after our presentation. The humans proceeded to show recordings of their history, primitive battles with chemical weapons, basic space exploration, rudimentary genetic engineering. Vix felt his initial assessment confirmed with each passing moment. These humans were nowhere near ready for true galactic civilization. We've seen enough, Vix announced. Humanity will be classified as a protected species, Grade 3. You will be assigned an Imperial governor to oversee your development. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but her voice carried a new edge. Commander, we decline protected status. Earth will remain independent. The Zarkonian delegation erupted in clicking laughter, their scales flashing amusing patterns. Vix himself had to control this mirth. You don't have a choice, Admiral. Your species is barely above the level of animals. Accept our protection, or face our displeasure." Chen smiled then, a small expression that Vix's xenobiologists would later flag as a warning sign. "Supreme Commander, I want to be very clear. Humanity won't be surrendering its sovereignty. Not today. Not ever. We're willing to be allies, trading partners, even friends, but not subjects. You would dare defy the Empire." Vix's scales turned threat red. "We would defend ourselves," Chen corrected. "Something our history shows we're very, very good at. I suggest you review our full historical database before making any decisions you might regret." As the Zarkonian delegation returned to their ship, Vix felt the first stirring of uncertainty. These humans were clearly inferior in every measurable way, yet they showed no fear. Either they were too primitive to understand their situation, or he pushed the thought aside. After all, what could these soft, weak creatures possibly do against the might of the Zarkonian Empire? He would learn the answer sooner than he expected. 3 months after the Geneva meeting, the Zarkonian Empire made its first move. Their warships appeared in orbit around Mars, establishing a protective presence over humanity's fledgling colony. Supreme Commander Vix expected immediate capitulation. Instead, he received silence. The Mars colony, home to 12,000 humans, seemed to vanish overnight. Where there had been bustling domed cities and mining operations, sensors now showed only empty structures and powered-down equipment. The colonists had disappeared into the extensive tunnel networks beneath the Martian surface, leaving behind a maze of booby-trapped corridors and false readings. "Impossible," Vix muttered, watching the sensor feeds from his command chair. "They had no warning of our arrival. No species can evacuate an entire colony that quickly." Science Director Malera's tentacles twisted nervously as she reviewed the data. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting unusual patterns in their communication satellites. The humans appear to be using their primitive internet system in ways our AI can't fully decode. They're using obsolete technology to hide their movements," Vix realized, his scales darkening with anger. "Find them. Send in the ground forces." The Zarkonian troops, encased in battle armor that could withstand plasma weapons, descended onto the Martian surface. They moved with practiced precision, expecting to round up hiding humans with ease. Instead, they found themselves fighting against an enemy they couldn't see. Automated defense systems activated seemingly at random. Tunnel sections would decompress without warning. Supply lines were disrupted by mysterious equipment failures. The Zarkonians' advanced weapons and armor meant nothing against an opponent that refused to meet them in direct combat. On Earth, Admiral Chen sat in the newly constructed Deep Command facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the situation unfold. Around her, hundreds of human operators coordinated the defense of Mars using a combination of pre-positioned assets and improvised tactics. "Status report," she ordered, her voice calm despite the stakes. Colonel James Martinez, her head of special operations, stepped forward. "The Quantum Ghost Protocol is working perfectly, Admiral. Every time their AI tries to track our communications, it gets tangled in a web of quantum-encrypted cat videos and social media posts. They still haven't figured out we're using their own scanning attempts to transmit our real commands." Chen nodded, allowing herself a small smile. The Zarkonians' dismissal of human technology had been their first mistake. They never considered that a species might deliberately maintain primitive systems as a backup. Their eye was so advanced that it couldn't properly interpret the seemingly random noise of old-style radio transmissions and early digital protocols. "What about the Mars Defense Force?" she asked. "Colonel Lisa Wong reports all units are in position," Martins replied. "The Zarkonians have lost 20% of their ground forces to environmental accidents. They still think they're fighting the Martian environment rather than us." The massive screens showed thermal images of Zarkonian troops cautiously advancing through Martian tunnels, completely unaware that the random equipment failures and atmospheric problems were actually a carefully orchestrated dance. Human defenders, using suits designed to mask their heat signatures, moved like ghosts through maintenance shafts and emergency routes that didn't appear on any official maps. "They're about to reach Storage Complex 7, Martins noted, his expression grim. Colonel Wong requests permission to proceed with Phase 2. Chen studied the tactical display for a long moment. The Zarkonians had pushed exactly where the humans had led them, their arrogance making them predictable. "Give the order. Let's show them why you don't corner humans in tunnels we've had decades to prepare." Deep beneath the Martian surface, Colonel Lisa Wong received the confirmation signal. Her troops were scattered throughout the tunnel network, each small team operating independently according to prearranged protocols. The Zarkonians had expected to find cowering civilians. Instead, they had walked into a killing field prepared by some of the most experienced underground warfare specialists in human history. All units, Wong transmitted using short-range quantum burst communications that were virtually undetectable. "Execute Phase 2. Remember, we're not trying to win a stray fight. Make them fear the dark." The Zarkonian troops, advancing confidently through what they thought was an abandoned storage complex, never saw the attack coming. Sections of tunnel that their scans had shown as solid rock turned out to be holographic projections. Others that appeared empty contained automated defense systems that activated without warning. Human operators, using exoskeletons designed to work in Mars' low gravity, moved through maintenance tubes that the Zarkonian sensors registered as being too small for any sentient being to use. In his command ship, Vix watched in growing frustration as his ground forces reported increasing casualties without ever engaging in direct combat. His troops were being killed by traps, by atmospheric failures, by mysterious accidents, but never in actual battle with human soldiers. "This is impossible," he snarled, his scales now a deep purple of rage. "They're primitives. They barely have energy weapons. How are they doing this?" Melera's tentacles were nearly tied in knots as she processed the incoming data. "Supreme Commander, I believe they're using our own assumptions against us. Our sensors are calibrated to detect advanced energy weapons and sophisticated technology. These humans are using mechanical traps, atmospheric pressure differentials, and their knowledge of the tunnel systems too. To make us defeat ourselves," Vix finished, a new emotion creeping into his voice. "Respect. Send the evacuation order. Pull all troops back to the ships." As the Zarkonian forces retreated in disarray, Admiral Chen watched from her command center. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "And next time, they'll be ready for our tricks." Martinez nodded. "Yes, Mom, but they'll never look at us the same way again." They came expecting to find primitive savages hiding in caves. Instead, they found out why humans have been fighting and winning wars in tunnels since before we had written language. Chen's expression hardened. "Signal all commands. Begin preparations for Phase 3. The Zarkonians thought they could intimidate us into submission. Time to show them what happens when humans decide to fight back." In orbit around Mars, Vix stared at the red planet with all four eyes, his scales shifting through patterns that hadn't been seen in Zarkonian commanders for generations. Uncertainty, confusion, and the first traces of fear. These humans were not what they seemed. The question was, what else were they hiding? The Zarkonian Imperial Council gathered in their crystalline chamber on their homeworld, their scales reflecting a kaleidoscope of agitated colors. Supreme Commander Vix stood before them, delivering a report that none had expected to hear. "The humans are not what we thought," he stated, projecting images of the Mars debacle. "Their primitive technology masks sophisticated capabilities. They've developed their warfare doctrine around appearing weak, then exploiting their enemies' overconfidence." High Counselor Nexer's scales flickered with skepticism. "They're still a Grade 3 species. Their ships have no energy shields. Their weapons are based on primitive projectiles. Even their bodies require constant maintenance, which is precisely why they're dangerous," Vix countered. "They've evolved their tactics around their limitations. But there's something else." His scales shifted to warning purple. We've detected unusual energy signatures from their lunar bases, energy patterns that suggest they've been experimenting with technologies far beyond their official capabilities. The council chamber erupted in debate, but their discussion was interrupted by an urgent transmission. The humans had launched what appeared to be a massive mining operation in the asteroid belt. Hundreds of ships, officially registered as civilian mining vessels, were moving through the belt with suspicious precision. "Enough," Nexer declared. "Launch the invasion fleet. Show these humans the true might of the Empire. No more games, no more patience. Crush them." On Earth, Admiral Chen received the warning from their deep space monitoring stations. The Zarkonian invasion fleet was massive. Over 300 warships, each capable of reducing a city to ash. They appeared near Jupiter, their crystalline hulls forming a deadly beautiful spectacle against the gas giant's storms. Chen activated the quantum-encrypted channel to all Earth defense commands. Operation Revelation is now in effect. All units, execute your assigned protocols. The Zarkonian fleet approached Earth with overwhelming force, expecting to find a primitive defense screen of satellites and chemical rockets. Instead, they found nothing. Earth's orbital defenses had vanished, its military installations apparently abandoned. "Another of their disappearing tricks," Vix muttered. "Scan for underground facilities." Before his crews could comply, the first wave of humanity's true defense platforms emerged from camouflaged positions in the asteroid belt. These weren't the primitive weapons the Zarkonians had seen before. These were the products of decades of secret research and development, weaponry that humanity had prayed they'd never need to use. Quantum-phased particle beams sliced through Zarkonian energy shields as if they didn't exist. Gravity lances, reverse-engineered from studies of ancient ruins on Mars, disrupted the very space around the crystalline ships. Swarms of microsatellites, each carrying an antimatter warhead barely larger than a grain of rice, surrounded capital ships in clouds of devastating destruction. "Impossible," Vix roared as his fleet scattered in confusion. "Their technology was primitive. We saw their facilities. You saw what we wanted you to see." Chen's voice came through on all frequencies. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to survive is to be underestimated. Those mining ships you've been watching, they're not mining vessels. They're mobile weapons platforms we've been building in plain sight for the past decade. The lunar bases suddenly erupted with activity, revealing massive hangars hidden beneath the regolith. From these emerged Earth's true warships, vessels that combined the best of human ingenuity with technologies that the Zarkonians had assumed were centuries beyond Earth's capability. "We reversed-engineered portions of your technology from the debris you carelessly left in our system," Chen continued. "But more importantly, we improved it. Your energy shields are perfect against energy weapons, so we developed weapons that ignore them completely. Your crystalline hulls are virtually indestructible, so we found ways to attack the space around them instead." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Zarkonian Empire had seen in 10,000 years of conquest. Human ships, though smaller and seemingly more fragile than their Zarkonian counterparts, moved with incredible precision. Their crews, trained in endless simulations using data gathered from observing Zarkonian tactics, exploited every weakness in the Empire's supposedly superior technology. From his flagship, now trailing crystalline fragments from multiple hits, Vix watched in astonishment as his fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning, using strategies and technologies that no one had thought possible for a primitive species. "Full retreat," he ordered, his scales now showing colors of defeat that no Zarkonian commander had displayed in centuries. Back to the Jupiter defense line. But as his battered ships tried to withdraw, they found their retreat cut off by more human vessels emerging from stealth positions. The asteroid belt itself seemed to come alive with weapons platforms and defensive systems that had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as mining equipment and research stations. Admiral Chen's voice came through once more. "Supreme Commander Vix, the Zarkonian Empire has two choices. You can either recognize humanity as equals and enter into genuine diplomatic negotiations, or you can continue this battle and learn exactly how many more surprises we've been keeping in reserve. In the Imperial Council chamber, watching the battle through faster-than-light communications, High Counselor Nexor's scales had shifted to a color never before seen in the chamber, the deep blue of absolute shock. "How?" he whispered. "How did we not see this?" A junior science officer, braver than most, spoke up. "Because, High Counselor, we saw their weaknesses and assumed they were limitations. We never considered that they might have turned those very weaknesses into strengths. The battle for Earth would become a turning point in galactic history. The day when a supposedly primitive species proved that being underestimated was perhaps the greatest advantage of all." In the 3 days following the Battle of Earth, the galaxy's political landscape shifted dramatically. The Zarkonian Empire's aura of invincibility had been shattered, and recordings of their defeat spread through the quantum networks of a dozen species. But humanity wasn't finished surprising the galaxy. Admiral Chen sat in her office beneath Mount Cheyenne, reviewing tactical displays showing Zarkonian fleet movements. The Empire had withdrawn to their staging areas near Jupiter, but intelligence suggested they were preparing for a massive counterattack. Their pride wouldn't allow them to accept defeat at the hands of a primitive species. "They're calling in reinforcements from 3 sectors," Colonel Martinez reported, highlighting energy signatures on the display. "Early estimates suggest over 1,000 ships." Chen nodded, seemingly unperturbed by the overwhelming numbers. "Have they found any of our Phase 4 installations?" "No, Admiral. The quantum camouflage is holding. They still think Jupiter's moons are nothing but frozen rocks." The truth was far more interesting. While the Zarkonians had been focused on Earth and Mars, humanity had been busy transforming Jupiter's largest moons into something unprecedented. Europa's subsurface ocean now housed vast manufacturing complexes. Ganymede's core had been converted into a power generation facility that harnessed the moon's magnetic field. And Callisto was humanity's masterpiece of military engineering. "Status of the Callisto array?" Chen asked. Martinez's expression held a hint of pride. "Fully operational. The gravitational lens is aligned and powered. We can initiate the sequence whenever you give the word." The Callisto array was perhaps humanity's greatest secret, a massive installation that used Jupiter's gravity well as part of a weapons system that could disrupt the very fabric of space-time. It was the kind of technology that the Zarkonians had deemed impossible for a Grade 3 species to even theorize, let alone construct. On the Zarkonian flagship, Supreme Commander Vix reviewed the battle plans with his staff. His scales now showed the deep crimson of determination mixed with the orange of caution. The humans had proven far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, but surely they couldn't stand against the Empire's full might. "We'll attack in waves," he announced. "The first wave will focus on their orbital defenses. The second will target their lunar bases. The third will—" "Supreme Commander," a sensor operator interrupted, their scales flashing alarm patterns. "We're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the Jogian system." Before Vix could respond, space itself seemed to twist around his fleet. The Callisto array had activated, creating a gravitational lens that focused and amplified Jupiter's magnetic field into a weapon of unprecedented power. Zarkonian ships found their crystalline hulls vibrating at frequencies that threatened to tear them apart. But this wasn't a weapon of destruction. This was something far more sophisticated. "What's happening?" Vix demanded as his ship's systems began shutting down. The answer came from Admiral Chen, broadcasting on all frequencies. "The Callisto array isn't designed to destroy your ships, Commander. It's designed to give you a choice. Right now, your fleet is caught in a localized disruption of space-time. You can either power down your weapons and accept our terms for peace, or you can experience what it's like to have time pass at 1,000th of normal speed, while the rest of the galaxy moves on without you." The threat was elegant in its complexity. The Zarkonians prided themselves on their long lives and their empire's ancient history. The prospect of being trapped in a temporal bubble, becoming living fossils while the galaxy evolved without them, was perhaps the one threat that could truly shake their confidence. "You're bluffing," Vex responded, but his scales showed the pale yellow of uncertainty. No Grade 3 species could control temporal mechanics. The same way no Grade 3 species could defeat your fleet. Chen's voice held no mockery, only quiet confidence. "Your classification system is flawed, Commander. It assumes that technological development follows a predictable linear path. Humanity took a different route. We developed the technologies we needed, not the ones you expected us to have." In the Imperial Council chamber, watching the situation unfold, High Counselor Nexer made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. "Open a direct channel to Earth's leaders," he ordered. "It's time we acknowledged our error in judgment." The response came not from political leaders, but from Admiral Chen herself. "High Counselor, humanity is prepared to negotiate. But understand this. We won't accept any position of subservience. We've proven we can defend ourselves. Now let's see if we can be allies instead of enemies." As the negotiations began, Colonel Martinez turned to Admiral Chen. Was the Callisto Array really capable of creating a temporal bubble? Chen's slight smile held volumes. "The beauty of being underestimated, Colonel, is that sometimes the threat of what you might be capable of is more powerful than any weapon you actually possess." The Callisto Array powered down, its true capabilities remaining one of humanity's many carefully guarded secrets. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had proven that appearances could be deceiving. The age of underestimating Earth was over. 1 month after the Jupiter incident, the great crystalline halls of the Zarkonian Imperial Palace hosted an unprecedented event. For the first time in the Empire's 10,000-year history, a delegation from a lesser species stood as equals before the Imperial Council. Admiral Sarah Chen led the human diplomatic team, her simple dress uniform standing in stark contrast to the ornate crystalline armor of the Zarkonian nobles. High Counselor Nexer's scales shifted through thoughtful patterns of blue and gold as he addressed the assembled dignitaries. "The Empire acknowledges that we have made a grave error in our assessment of humanity. Recent events have proven that our classification system, unchanged for millennia, requires significant revision." Supreme Commander Vix stood at attention nearby, his scales now showing the respectful green of formal diplomatic engagement, a far cry from the dismissive colors he had displayed during first contact. The memory of his fleet hanging helpless in the gravitational lens of the Callisto Array had fundamentally changed his perspective on human capabilities. "Your species presents us with a puzzle," Nexer continued. "You lack natural armor, yet you've developed defenses we never imagined. Your bodies are fragile, yet you've turned that very fragility into an advantage. You appeared primitive, yet you harbored technologies that rival or exceed our own in many areas." Admiral Chen stepped forward. "High Counselor, humanity has learned through long and often bitter experience that appearing weak while being strong is far more advantageous than appearing strong while being weak. We didn't set out to deceive the galaxy. We simply prepared for the worst while hoping for the best." The human delegation had brought proof of their capabilities, not weapons this time, but innovations. They demonstrated medical technologies that could repair injuries that would be fatal even to Zarkonians, communication systems that worked on principles the Empire's scientists had never considered, and engineering solutions that turned apparent disadvantages into unique strengths. "Your species turned the very things we dismissed as weaknesses into sources of incredible innovation," Melera observed, her tentacles moving in patterns of scientific fascination. "Your need for environmental protection led you to develop stealth systems we couldn't detect. Your physical fragility drove you to create medical technology that surpasses our own. Even your short lifespans seem to have given you a drive to achieve and innovate that our longer-lived species often lack." In the following days, as human and Zarkonian scientists began sharing knowledge, both species made surprising discoveries. The humans' primitive quantum communication systems, developed to work with limited resources, proved more efficient than the Empire's standard networks. Zirconian crystalline technology, combined with human adaptive engineering principles, opened new possibilities in both computing and energy generation. But perhaps the most significant changes were cultural. The Empire, which had classified and dismissed countless species as inferior over the millennia, began to look at other races with new eyes. If they had been so wrong about humanity, what other potential allies and innovations had they overlooked? "We've established a new classification system," Nexer announced during the final day of negotiations, "one that measures not just technological achievement, but adaptability, innovation, and potential. Under these new criteria, humanity ranks among the most advanced species we have encountered." Admiral Chen accepted the declaration with characteristic calm. "The rankings matter less than what we do with this opportunity, High Counselor. Humanity doesn't seek dominion or control. We want partnership. Together, our species could achieve things neither of us could manage alone." As if to emphasize her point, the first joint human-Zirconian research team had just made a breakthrough in FTL technology, combining Zirconian crystalline engineering with human quantum mechanics to achieve speeds previously thought impossible. Supreme Commander Vix, watching the proceedings, turned to Colonel Martinez, who had become his unofficial liaison with Earth's military. "Tell me truthfully, Colonel, could the Callisto array really have trapped us in a temporal bubble?" Martinez smiled slightly. "Commander, you're still asking the wrong questions. The real question isn't what our weapons can do. It's what we're capable of achieving now that we don't need to use them." The ceremony concluded with the signing of the Terra-Zirconian Accord, a document that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. But its most important clause wasn't about military power or technological exchange. It was a simple statement that would be studied by future generations of both species. The true measure of a civilization lies not in its natural advantages, but in how it overcomes its inherent limitations. Strength can be found in apparent weakness, and wisdom often lies in admitting when one has been wrong. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Admiral Chen had one final meeting with High Counselor Nexer. The Zirconian leader's scales showed a new color pattern, one that had never been seen before in Imperial records. "What does that color mean?" Chen asked, curious. "Our historians believe it's an ancient pattern meaning enlightened humility," Nexer replied, "though none living had seen it before today. Your species has taught us something we had forgotten in our 10,000 years of power, that true strength often lies hidden, and that wisdom can come from the most unexpected sources." Chen nodded. "And perhaps we've learned something too. That appearing weak isn't always the best strategy. Sometimes, showing your true strength is what makes real friendship possible." As the human ships departed, their advanced drives leaving no visible trace in space, the galaxy had changed irrevocably. The legend of how a supposedly weak species had outsmarted and outmaneuvered one of the oldest empires in known space would be told and retold across 1,000 worlds. But the true victory wasn't in the battles won or the technologies revealed. It was in the realization that strength comes in many forms, and that underestimating others is perhaps the greatest weakness of all.